Hi everyone, back again for Whitman tutorials. This time what we're going to do is take up Song of Myself, and it is going to be stanzas 13 through 52. And again, what we're doing is we're touching on the high points. I'm doing three things. First of all, I'm going to be highlighting some things that perhaps escaped your notice. Secondly, I will point out unfamiliar vocabulary. And thirdly, I hope to deepen your understanding. Very important to keep in mind that your thesis is your own. But what I'd like you to do is peruse these poems again, perhaps with me as we go through the video, and make sure that you have a pretty good understanding of what Whitman intends with each of his poems. Again, keep in mind that Whitman, 19th century American poet, wrote mostly in unrhymed free verse around the themes of unity, transcendentalism, and in general this idea of the equality of all human beings. Those are just the tips of the iceberg in terms of Whitman's themes. He has many more than that, but what I'd like you to do is focus on some of the features I point out, as well as some of the features you already know. Okay? Here we go. Stanza 13. And this is the great stanza that talks about diversity. Okay? In stanza 13, he talks about the Negro holding firmly the reins of his four horses. The block swags underneath on its tied-over chain. He's talking essentially about an African American, and the African American has a difficult job. He's trying to control four horses. So keep in mind that this imagery is not supposed to be the image of an unfortunate person. This is actually, as you go through this and look at Whitman's tone, his tone is other than what you would suspect of someone who perhaps doesn't have very high status in society. Keep in mind that Whitman is a poet of diversity. He looks at he sees the Negro's glance as calm and commanding, which suggests a certain amount of power. He refers to him as a picturesque giant. If something is picturesque, it means it serves as an example. It's the type of thing that you would see as a model. It's something that you would see as sort of the paradigm for what something is. And then what he does is he looks at this particular thing, and again he talks about how he loves this scenario. He talks about when he uses the word niches, he means small spaces. He talks about the oxen that are yoked together. Yoke, Y-O-K-E, is that thing that yokes, that puts together animals so that they're able to pull forward. The other thing that he does is he is out there in the wild, and so he changes scene. He says, "My tread scares the wood drake and the wood duck on my distant and day-long ramble. They rise together, they slowly circle around." So he goes from this picture of a man driving, driving horses forward, to what he sees on the road, and that is two ducks sort of flying in harmony. And then he says, "I believed in those winged purposes." And you'll notice winged is spelled W-I-N-G apostrophe D. And again, that's kind of a Whitman's idiosyncratic syntax usage there. And he says, "I believe in those winged purposes, and acknowledge red, yellow, white playing within me, and consider green and violent and the tufted crown intentional, and do not call the tortoise unworthy because she is not something else. And the in the woods never studied the gamut, yet trills pretty well to me, and the look of the bay mare shames silliness out of me." Here is where Whitman starts talking about not just human beings, but also all creatures on the planet, including animals. It's almost as if he puts us all, himself included, on the same footing. All right, now stanza 14. Here's where he actually spends more time looking at the sky. He looks at the wild gander, and that word he uses, yonk, which is basically onomatopoeia and personification. The goose is talking to him. The gander, the male goose, is talking to him. And then what he does is he goes on and talks about some of the creatures that live on the North American continent, and goes into deep detail. The ones who are having babies, the ones who are babies. And then he ends with, I see in them and myself the same old law. This idea that maybe we're all subject to the same rules on this planet. And then he uses the word in the next stanza, I am enamored. By enamored, he means in love with, okay? He is in love with going out of doors, okay? And then he talks about the type of people who will live outdoors. And then he talks about wielders of axes and mauls. Mauls, M-A-U-L-S, are heavy tools that are used when an axe doesn't work. You put a maul there, and then you strike it with an axe. The other way around, you put an axe there and you strike it with a maul in order to split timber. And then at this last stanza, I want you to think about what it means to you. I'm not going to give you a thesis, but I want you to think carefully about how this relates to Whitman's themes. What is commonest, cheapest, nearest, easiest is me. Me going in for my chances, spending for vast returns, adorning myself, to bestow myself on the first that will take me, not asking the sky to come down to my goodwill, scattering it freely forever. A word that I'm going to ask you to focus on here is cheapest. He doesn't necessarily think about the various senses of the word cheap. It might not necessarily have a negative connotation there. And then goodwill. The it that he's scattering freely forever might be his goodwill. And I want you to consider that as part of perhaps an overall idea for this poem. Okay, so let us move very, very rapidly and far ahead to stanzas 17 and 18. In stanza 17, he talks about the thoughts of men in all ages and lands, and we all know what theme that refers to, the theme of universality, the theme of all of us being at some level equal. They are not original with me. So he's admitting it. He's admitting that he's not saying anything new, anything that hasn't already been said by others. And again, he's addressing the you. He's addressing the audience in this stanza. This is the grass that grows wherever the land is and the water lives. This is the common air that bathes the globe. And again, if you think about this idea of grass being the great equalizer, we all go to the earth and spring up as grass again. Seems to be Whitman's theme. It's kind of like the Lion King theme. If you remember the speech with Simba and Mufasa, right? This idea that eventually we all go to the earth and we all turn into grass, and that grass feeds the animals, and it's the great circle of life. Very, very important. Again, note the repetition. Okay, and then in stanza 18, with music strong I come with my cornets and my drums. Cornets are brass instruments, and they're military instruments. I play not marches, again, military movements. I play not marches for accepted victors only. I play marches for conquered and slain persons. Now, this is a different stanza altogether. He's essentially saying that he's not just singing for the winners, he's also singing for the conquered and the slain. Have you heard that it was good to gain the day? I also say it is good to fall. Battles are lost in the same spirits in which they are won. So he's basically saying that, yes, we've all heard that it's good to win the day, but you can win the spirit of the battle without actually winning the battle. And then he says, I beat and pound for the dead. I blow through my embouchures. Embouchures are that little part of your lip that enables you to play a brass instrument. My loudest and gayest for them. Viva, long live. Vivas to those who have failed, and to those whose war vessels sank in the sea, and to those themselves who sank in the sea, and to all generals that lost engagements, and all overcome heroes, and the numberless unknown heroes, to the greatest heroes unknown. And so basically, he's also acknowledging the fact that not everybody who has passed into the great oneness or beyond has been a winner. And it's really important that he mentions it because, of course, there's a historical reason. What, of course, was the most influential conflict of the 19th century? Well, it was the Civil War. And so in order to be united, he would have to acknowledge both the winners, the North, and also the vanquished, which was the South. And so he's basically giving us this sort of vast equivalence there too. Something to think about. Again, I don't know how you're going to add it up into a thesis. That's entirely up to you. But these are the suggestions and the allusions that he's making. All right, so let us go to number 32, stanza 32. And this is one of my favorites because he basically spends some time focusing on creatures other than men. I think I could turn and live with animals. They are so placid and self-contained. I stand and look at them long and long. They do not sweat and whine about their condition. They do not lie awake in the dark and weep for their sins. They do not make me sick discussing their duty to God. No one is dissatisfied. Not one is demented with the mania of owning things. Not one kneels to another, nor his kind that lived thousands of years ago. Not one is respectable or unhappy over the whole earth. So they show their relations to me, and I accept them. They bring me tokens of myself. They evince them plainly in their possession. I wonder where they get those tokens. Did I pass that way huge times ago and negligently drop them? Myself moving forward then and now and forever, gathering and showing more always, with velocity, infinite and omnigenous, and the like of all of these among them, not too exclusive toward the reachers of my remembrancers, picking out here the one that I love, and now go with him on brotherly terms. A gigantic beauty of a stallion, fresh and responsive to my caresses, head high in the forehead, wide between the ears, limbs glossy and supple, tail dusting the ground, eyes full of sparkling wickedness, ears finely cut, flexibly moving. His nostrils dilate as my heels embrace him. His well-built limbs tremble with pleasure as we race around in return. I but use you a minute, then I resign you, stallion. Why do I need your patience when I myself outgallop them, even as I stand or sit passing faster than you? A couple of things are going on here. The image of the stallion, the idea that he's talking about riding a horse, basically. In these last few stanzas, he appreciates the horse and its responsiveness and the way it's built and its beauty. And what he does is basically he says, I can pretty much outgallop you. Where? Maybe his imagination, maybe in terms of his spirit. Again, your thesis depends on you. But a couple of words that I'm going to direct you to. In the very, very first stanza, he talks about he uses the word placid. Placid means peaceful, sort of unmoving, right? Another word is demented. Demented means crazy or mentally ill. Another word is tokens. Token is a reminder. Negligently means carelessly. Velocity is speed. Omnigenous means made up of all kinds. Remembrancers means those who remember him. And of course, the stallion is just a large horse. I'm trying to think of any other things that I could add to that. Oh, the word evince. Evince means to show or give evidence of. Okay, so they bring me reminders of myself. They give evidence of them plainly they give evidence of these tokens plainly. So I'm going to let you sort of think about the meaning of this particular stanza on your own and form a thesis around it. I think that I think again that if you look at Whitman's attitude toward nature, toward living creatures, toward the whole idea of freedom, and then sort of put it together with some of the visual images that he uses, I think you'll do just fine with this one. All right, let us move finally to stanzas 51 and 52. And it's really important to know that this is his conclusion. And Whitman, over his lifetime, worked tirelessly on Leaves of Grass and Song of Myself. And so this is Whitman in the final stanzas of his life's work, talking about what it means to end. It's a stanza, in a sense, about ending. And so let's go over it kind of, and again, your thesis is going to be your own on these two, but let's go over them a little bit and see what other light we can shed. The past and the present wilt. I have filled them, emptied them, and proceed to fill my next fold of the future. Listener up there, what have you to confide in me? Look in my face while I snuff the sidle of the evening. Talk honestly, no one else hears you, and I stay only a minute longer. Do I contradict myself? Very well, I contradict myself. I am large. I contain multitudes. I concentrate toward them that are nigh. I wait on the door slab. Who has done his day's work? Who will soonest be through with his supper? Who wishes to walk with me? Will you speak before I am gone? Will you prove already too late? So some important questions to ask yourself. He's talking about time. He starts out with the past and present, and at the end he wonders if he's too late. He wants to be listened to. Who's the listener? We don't know. Maybe you know. Maybe you can advance an answer. Keep in mind the parentheses. Sometimes when Whitman uses parentheses, it's not because it's unimportant. It's because it's an aside. He talks about contradicting himself. Does he contradict himself? And what does it mean when he says, I'm large, I contain multitudes? There's a sense that he's already going and already gone. In stanza 52, he gives us a beautiful image of the spotted hawk. Just think about him. The spotted hawk swoops by, accuses me. He complains of my gab and my loitering. Gab is just talkiness, and his loitering, his waiting around. So the bird is accusing him. What's the bird accusing him of? What would the bird be asking him, this old man, at the very end of his master poem? I, too, am not a bit tamed. I, too, am untranslatable. I sound my barbaric yop over the roofs of the world. What is a yop? It's a made-up word, but it's like, ah! It's Whitman's hootin' and hollerin'. It's Whitman's war cry. It's the sound that the hawk makes, except a man is making it, the barbaric yop. Okay, so he's still the old white, gray-bearded poet at the final stages, and he's sounding his yawp. The last scud, the last remnants of the day holds back for me. It flings my likeness after the rest, and true as any on the shadowed wild, it coaxes me to the vapor and dust. He's being called away to the vapor and dust. Think about what that means. I depart as air. I shake my white locks at the runaway sun. I effuse my flesh in eddies and drift it in lacy jags. Eddies, of course, are little mini sort of little whirlpools, and drifted in lacy jags, like ice. Little piece, when ice freezes, like lace. I bequeath myself to the dirt, to grow from the grass I love. If you want me again, look for me under your boot soles. To bequeath means to will. You will hardly know who I am or what I mean, but I shall be good health to you nevertheless, and filter and fiber your blood. Failing to fetch me at first, keep encouraged. Missing me one place, search another. I stop somewhere waiting for you. As you think about what sort of thesis statement you would have for stanzas 51 and 52, what do you think Whitman is trying to intend to say to us about what the nature of his life has been? Why does he use the images he uses? How does it all come together in terms of Whitman's view of life and death? I stop somewhere waiting for you. Who's the you? Who's the I? Is it Walt? Is it the cosmic I? Is it his great gray poet persona? I'm waiting for your thesis on this one. Great. So that's the end of Leaves of Grass. I hope that was helpful. And stay tuned for a tutorial on some of the smaller poems. Okay?